my name is Trinity, and if you are here, you must be here to talk about books. Today, I am actually going to be talking about reading with ADHD and what that is like. So I've had this conversation with many friends. I've had this conversation on Discord, and it was brought to my attention that this could probably be good for other people dealing with ADHD and not enjoying reading, or just a general overview of why I read what I read, why I like what I like, and why I don't like certain things. So we're going to get into a lot of the issues that occur with ADHD and how that affects my reading. And I hope you guys stick around because this is supposed to be informative. It might be a little bit chock full of ADHD issues because I have tried recording this video twice. So my brain's about to explode. So I'm going to go through, like I said, a lot of the issues that people with ADHD deal with, especially adults with ADHD. And I'm going to focus on how this affects my reading, each one. The first is a lack of attention to detail. So I have talked about this and how this affects my reading, a lack of attention to detail. The thing that I do not like when I start reading is a lot of descriptive words because I don't care. So with Game of Thrones in particular, Stephen King in particular, there's a lot of unnecessary description and I can't read it. My brain does not process it. It's just words on a page. And so when I start reading really lengthy descriptions, my brain goes to Neverland. We are off in our own little world saying, oh, hey, look, there's another book I want to read. Oh, hey, look, there's my dog. Oh, you know what would be cool? If I could have my entire house cleaned today. So lengthy descriptions really pull me out of a book. I don't have an attention to details, so there will be things that even if they were important later on, I'm not going to remember it. And I always use the 2-page description of the wall from George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones as a big example of this. 2 pages of description is way too much. And I like what's called deliberate description. This may be my own term, but I've heard it used before, and it may have been after I used it, but I'm not sure. But Anthony Ryan is a really good example of using deliberate description. All of his descriptions play into something that is currently going on, the current setting that we are in, and they don't detract from the story at all. Giles Christian is also very good at this. Zach Argyle is very good at this. And it gives you a very clear picture of what's going on without being description piled on top of description piled on top of description. This is a lot of the reason that I can't read The Wheel of Time. And I also use the example of Robert Jordan describing clothing. It's great to have this visualization of what the world is like around you. And yes, I do need some of that, especially with fantasy, because you're building a world. So there needs to be some world building. But it's one of those things that, do we really need all of that description? Is it really necessary? For a brain with ADHD, no. Second big thing that plays into my life and to reading is difficulty paying attention to tasks. So, reading is a task, even though I enjoy it. And part of the reason that reading is a task for me is because, one, I'm a YouTuber. Two, I'm a book blogger. These are things that I need to do to keep my YouTube going, to keep my blog going. And there are things that I could be doing, playing video games, cleaning my house. And because I am task oriented, I need to have priority settings for what I'm going to do that day. However, we will talk about executive dysfunction later. Tasks are tasks, things that I have to do within the day. And if something becomes taxing in one task, then all of my other tasks fall behind. And when I get into a book that is not to my taste, this is why I DNF it. Because not only is it going to affect my reading, it's going to affect my personal life. So if I'm DNFing a book based on character driven, based on slow pacing, things like that, that is why. It's not because I think it's a bad book. It's because I am task oriented and I can't let that one task fall into making the rest of my day bad, if that makes sense. Okay. People with ADHD tend to avoid things that are mentally taxing. So, I read Black Leopard, Red Wolf not too long ago and had to DNF it. It was too much for my brain. I couldn't handle it. And when things are chaotic or haphazard, I'm sure you guys have seen me use these descriptors before. I can't handle more chaos. So when books are chaotic or haphazard or, absurd, I recently took off Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and I won't read Terry Pratchett because I can't handle the absurdism. It is one thing that my brain will not process because it's mentally taxing. And does that mean I can't read difficult books? No. It just means how much mental effort am I willing to put into this particular book to move forward. One series that comes to mind and one that I think is worth the mental effort is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. There are a lot of things in this series that make it very, very difficult for me to read. So the large cast of characters, the constant shifting of POV, the intricate plot that is built in this story. Usually these are things that will turn me away from a book like that. And that is because it's mentally taxing for me. The Bone Shard Daughter is an excellent example of this. And the reason I like to use this as an example is because not only do we switch POV, we switch tenses within the story. So it read like 6 different books for me. And that made it very mentally taxing for me. And while it's very accessible in its writing style, and it reads at some points as more on the younger side, like new adult rather than adult, it's still mentally taxing for me. So there are a lot of times when something is mentally taxing for me that I will DNF. And I did make it through The Faithful and the Fallen, loved Ruin and Wrath so much. I did read the full of the Bone Shard Daughter, and I plan to continue with that series, but I know what I'm getting into going into it. And I think had I known that going into the Bone Shard Daughter, I would have been more mentally prepared for it, but because it was brand new and I had an arc of it, there was no way for me to mentally prepare for it. Now, let me say, I do now have someone in my life that I can bounce books off of. You guys have heard me talk about him before. His name is Andrew. And I can be like, can I handle this? Well, again, will I like this? What do you think of this? Because if you like it, I probably won't like it. And if you tell me that I could possibly like it, I know to still be mentally prepared for things that are coming. Okay, and the one obvious thing about ADHD, I am easily distracted. Very easily distracted. I know if you guys watched my previous videos, you can see me looking off into the distance because something else has caught my attention while I'm in the middle of talking to you. That is something that is very prevalent with ADHD, and you probably have seen the many memes that have a person in the middle of a sentence and going, ooh, shiny. Well, that's the way my brain works. It's just the way my brain works. And I can be in the middle of a book that I really like and go, I want to read that one. That one's calling me. What about that one? Can we read that one? Like, this one's good, but I like that one. And so it's one of those things that while I love creating TBRs, I'm always going to be distracted by other books. And that's never going to quit. I can't stop myself from doing it. It's one thing that all people with ADHD have a problem with. And so I know that you guys see a TBR and you're like, oh, that's what you're reading for this month. Yeah, that probably is what I'm reading for this month. On top of, the 5, 6, 10 other books that I pick up. Or these might get set to the wayside because these 10 caught my attention. But that is why I try to break away from TBRs a little bit. Even though I like the idea of a TBR, and I do kind of need a TBR to keep me on track and reading, there's a good chance that I will eventually pick up something else, or that my TBR just won't work out. And so I try not to give the false advertising of a TBR, and that's why I put out a seasonal TBR this last time I did one. And I'm going to be posting a TBR very soon for the end of the year that my husband chose for me. But that's just the way my brain works. Okay, let's talk about executive dysfunction for a moment, because this is the biggest problem I have with reading and in my personal life. And executive dysfunction basically means we have so much to do that we're going to do nothing. How does this affect my reading? Well, sometimes, especially when I build like a large TBR, I have the problem of looking at the stack and going, nope, don't want to do it. There's too many options. I don't like it. Put it away. We're just not going to think about it. The easiest way that I can describe how this works is making coffee. So my husband, I've asked him, okay, making coffee in the morning, tell me what you have to do. He's like, you got to put water in the machine, you got to put coffee in the machine and turn it on. Not untrue. However, for me, that's not how that works. So in the morning when I get up, I have to go get my coffee, clean out the machine, make sure it's dry so that there's no soapy residue behind, fill up the tank, put the coffee in, turn the machine on. It turns into a 10-step process versus a 3-step process. And that is where my executive dysfunction starts to eliminate tasks. And when the tasks start to get eliminated, say I am making coffee. Well, there's 10 tasks complete for the day. If I only have the mental capacity for 20 tasks that day, I'm halfway done with my day. And that is just the biggest thing that I can think of that will break my concentration. And as I'm talking to you, I can see my husband through the doorway. So that's another way that my ADHD works. Hi, baby. This affects my reading in a lot of ways, and it might explain to you guys why, even though I liked Dune, I hated the experience of reading it. Even though I liked The Bone Shard Daughter, I hated the experience of reading it. And why sometimes I DNF things just because my brain refuses to process them. And it's not something that I can control, but I have found ways to work around. And you know, there's just going to be some books that I can't read. I do worry about The Ember Blade over here because there's a lot of things in it that I know my brain will not want to process, but what can you do, right? What can you do? All right, that is it for my video today. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!